Well, which generation has been the most promiscuous, or the generation of free love? The answer may surprise you. You would probably not say it would be from the 1890s or 1910, because of the Victorian era was still present at that time, even though there was a lot of underlying things going on in the medical profession, as to treat hysteria was one of the things, which actually was to bring a woman to an orgasm, was to treat hysteria, until they actually figured out what the medical profession was doing back then. That was something else too, because even though on the surface of society nothing was going on, below the surface people were still people. So, but it would not actually be subscribed as the most free love, promiscuous generation being 1890 to 1910. Now we get into the 1920s. There was a relaxing of norms. But some of where I'm going to get onto is actually the median number of partners, which was for that particular era, those born in the 1910s and 1920s. The median number of partners, the average number of partners for that time period was one. So by and large, it was not a promiscuous generation, although there was a relaxing of standards and norms in the 20s. By far, it was quite a different cry from the 1890s or even 20 years earlier, in the 1900. But when you get on for like the 1930s, during the age of the Great Depression, yes, there was a little bit more. There was two in the 1930s, which was the average number, medium number for partners. So you could say there was a little bit of a relaxing of norms during that time, possibly brought upon, by Hollywood, possibly because before they had the standards set up, Hollywood movies were pretty risque, when they first came out. They were not exactly, there was no standards in the beginning. There was no this is G, this is PG, this is R, this is X, whatever. They did not have those type of standards back in the early days. But free love is something that's actually been a trend in the United States and a trend in the Western world, but it's a trend that's actually somewhat reversing, you'll find, in some ways. The 1930s, the 1940s, the 40s, the fabulous 40s, there was three, basically, partners on average born for people born in the 40s. That's pretty much, you could see there was more of a relaxing of standards. So basically in about 35 years, it went from an average of one partner to three partners on average. Then when you get into the real free love period, which is the hippie period, basically from what you call the baby boomers, which would be, I know there's a lot of different controversy as to, exactly what these ages, these time frames are. Actually, Harvard kind of just gives it simple. One of these Harvard studies puts it simply. They just break it down into 20-year periods. They'll say from, 45 to 64 is the baby boomers. Generation X is 65 to 84, although sometimes Generation X only goes up to 81. And then the millenniums start at 85 till present, or 2005, whatever. So we say that. But what's surprising is, what's not surprising, is during the time of, the baby boomers, which is during the time of the hippie movement, the average number of partners was four, born for those in the 50s and the 60s, which would have been basically during, the baby boomers. The age of, you could call that more the age of free love in some ways, but actually, it actually decreased on average in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Now here, they show Generation X 65 to 81. Some actually call it Generation X is 65 to 84, just to give it as even 20-year periods. It's a little controversial, but that's, it's not something that's a pinpoint scientific, argument here. It's like, but, round about that generation. Actually, this generation, Generation X, is probably the most promiscuous, but what actually slowed down this generation was the advent of AIDS or HIV. When it came down to the millenniums, there's actually less hooking up going on than in Generation X, per the studies. But the norms have changed. The attitudes have changed. Actually, when they're given a percentage of American adults who believe in pre-marital sex among adults was not wrong at all, That was the actual thing. Not wrong at all. 29% in the early 70s said that was okay, and 42% in the 80s and 90s, which is Generation X, and 49% in the 2000s, which could still be Generation X because they were born from 65 to 84, and 58% from 2010 to 2012. So you can see there's actually, a major relaxing of norms, So, maybe this could possibly see why there's a backlash from Islam because, to fill the void of, not that I agree with Islam, but, there should be a happy medium someplace. Let me put it that way. It's like when you go too far, the pendulum swings too far in one way in one portion of the world, the pendulum swings the other way in the other portion of the world. So, but actually, probably Generation X and the Millenniums, but probably Generation X would probably take the prize for being the most promiscuous, even more so than the baby boomer hippie generation of free love, which was actually, that was always touted to be at that time. Because the acceptance of same-sex between two men or two women increased dramatically. It was hovered around 11 to 16% in the 70s and 80s. It definitely was not something that was popular during the hippie times. Then it jumped to 22% in 93, and then it increased steadily, reaching 44% in 2012. So, there's actually a lot more relaxing of norms across society. But, actually Generation X and the Millenniums are probably, on average, more promiscuous than the hippie generation. But, we're actually having a relaxing of norms in the United States, which is interesting because, this is one of the things that they talked about in the communist world about, that the United States would fall apart because it's becoming less moral. But it's, yes and no, but, it's a different thing, it's different opinions for different people because there have been societies that were less moral but disciplined and moral in different ways. Maybe that's what it was, maybe there was a morality, there was a code that was still there. Because despite the fact that you change the code, you change the beliefs, there seems to always be a belief system no matter what. No matter what. Maybe it's one partner, but then, what happened, though, during this time period with Generation X, though, is that, yeah, it was okay, they said, more or less, to have premarital sex, but it was less okay to cheat on your partner. So it's like the norms actually said it was almost like you can have sex, but once you get committed to a partner, then you are actually committed to that partner. So that was, there's less people that say it was okay to cheat on your partner. Although that would have been more okay back, I don't know if it would have been admitted to, though, who knows, but the thing is that, in the 30s and the 40s, I guess when you had one partner, maybe it was more apt, or the 50s was more apt to say, well, it's less, less a problem if you cheat on your partner. Maybe that was the time, but even though maybe that wasn't said as much, but actually today, it's like the morality is you can do whatever you want before you get married or committed to somebody. But then once you are committed to somebody, the morality is you stay with that person. But they don't even to change about the differentiation between hetero and same sex and all that type of stuff. Those things actually change greatly. But I guess the most free love generation probably would be Generation X, from 65 to 81 or 65 to 84, depending on how you count it. And actually, a lot of these people born of this time were born of parents of the hippie generation. So in other words, you're talking about baby boomers from 45 on that were basically hippies in the 60s and the 70s. So, the free love conditioning that was on them, was instilled into their children. So that makes Generation X probably more promiscuous than any generation, ever since in the United States. But, it may be changing a little bit the other way, though, too, because actually, I know one of the things they talked about was the event of, I guess it was in the early 80s or whatever the hell it was that came on the scene, was the HIV/AIDS. But, the other thing is, they got STDs that are Lyme disease. They got Ebola is actually a STD 6 months after people have been cured of the disease. Now they're finding out it's 6 months after they've been cured of the disease, not 3 months. Would you believe that? So actually, this is changing a lot of people's behavior. So anyway, but if you want to take an interesting study, probably Generation X would probably win the prize, and I don't know. So they win the prize for being the most promiscuous generation, not by a landslide, but by a nose, I'd say. Anyway, that's what it would be. But as far as fashion, I don't know. It's a heads up because we have a retrograde 40s fashion, 20s fashion, and every age had their same human element that was going on. It just probably just not as discussed. That's the thing. If you looked at Hollywood, I'm sure there was a hell of a lot more free love going on behind the scenes, and a lot of those stories come out later on. But I'd say as far as the general, and actually these are per studies that I've read, the general outlook and the general opinions of people and the general behavior of people, Generation X is probably the most promiscuous and free love generation going.